Hi, my name is Singumbe Muyeba. I'm an assistant professor of African Studies here at the Joseph Cobell School of International Studies at the University of Denver. I teach two graduate courses, that is, the Political Economy of African Sustainable Development and Economic Development. And I'm looking to introduce another graduate course this fall titled African Theories by African Thinkers. I also teach an undergraduate course entitled African Development. At this moment, I'd like to talk about COVID-19 and how it is affecting Africa. I have both disciplinary and personal interest in how this global pandemic is affecting the continent. I teach on and conduct research in African countries and have friends and family in Zambia and friends in almost each African country. A small background to this virus. COVID-19 began in Wuhan province in China. There are many strains of the virus, but the current strain has a 94% genetic match with that commonly found in bats. What we know from the scientific literature is that the virus crossed over to humans through a vector, most likely the pangolin, which is primarily poached for its scales to use for medicinal purposes, but is also a delicacy mainly in China and also Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Singapore. The virus touched African soil in Egypt on February 14. By April 1, there were almost 6,000 confirmed cases across the continent, with more than 200 people dead. South Africa now has the most cases, with almost 1,500 confirmed. The response from African governments has been swift. In 6 weeks, the number of countries that could conduct tests grew from 2 to 47. Most countries are on lockdown, and some have even instituted curfews. There are several issues of concern that I'd like to delve into, and these are both of an immediate and long-term nature. First is the idea or stereotype circulating in Africa that Africans are immune to flu-type diseases, that African countries are safer because the virus is affecting regions with colder climates, and that foreign nationals are the ones bringing the disease to Africa. This is, of course, not true, as the evidence shows with how fast the number of cases are growing in Africa. Everyone is at some level of risk. Most importantly, although the virus does not survive extreme heat, the Southern Hemisphere is entering into its cold season, which may fuel a drastic rise in cases, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. The second issue is that governments have instituted lockdowns, but there are indicators that they may take advantage of the situation to violate constitutional and democratic principles. Some incumbent leaders have had to postpone elections, which is a good thing for now, but may take advantage by extending their tenure beyond what is necessary to eradicate COVID-19. Some leaders are taking advantage of the situation to close down businesses owned by rival politicians. Further, there have been reports of police brutality during the enforcement of lockdowns. It is vital that democratic institutions are safeguarded during this period. A third concern, and which I see as quite a big concern, is that if the virus gets into informal settlements or slum communities and rural areas, it could have devastating consequences because of no or lack of access to water and sanitation, as well as healthcare, limited healthcare facilities. There are over 200 million people living in slums across Africa. Further, 87% of Africa's working age population is employed in the informal sector, where people consume what they earn on a day-by-day basis and do not have protection against socioeconomic shocks such as this one. Being on lockdown is not a realistic expectation for their survival. I've heard of how the situation has forced some people into making existential arguments such as, it is better for me to die of COVID than of hunger. How to ensure that they earn their living without contracting and spreading COVID-19 needs to be taken seriously. Fourthly and finally, economic growth rates, which were already projected to be lower than previous years by the IMF, will slow down even further and cause many to fall back into poverty. If the East Asia and Pacific Economic Update report that was released by the World Bank a couple of days ago, which says up to 11 million people could fall into poverty in Asia, is anything to go by, we should expect such effects may occur in Africa. In fact, many of the countries that were in debt distress could experience similar restructuring as was instituted in the 1980s through the IMF and World Bank, that is, the structure adjustment programs. And those also had devastating social consequences. To conclude, my hope is that COVID-19 is an opportunity for governments and citizens in Africa to take seriously that in a globalized and highly interconnected world, forces, in this case pandemics, spare no one. I also hope that this period provides the opportunity for African governments and the civil society sector to strengthen their democratic institutions. Additionally, I hope that the provision of employment or unemployment benefits, unemployment benefit opportunities, and service provision to both the urban and rural poor be seen as absolutely fundamental to the social contract and not be subjected to ideologically based arguments that the market is paramount. Finally, I hope that governments can find ways to prepare for the imminent economic slowdown. Thank you very much.